Hello and welcome back to welcome to the American Corner Methodology Workshop Series here at the American Corner in Mongolia. Today our topic and our workshop is Grammar Games, Increasing Motivation and Retention Through Active Learning. So just a really quick introduction to me. Many of you have had an opportunity to attend one of these workshops previously, and so you already know the basics. My name is Heidi Healy. I am from the western part of the United States, from the state of Utah. That's where I'm recording this video. I was an English language fellow in China for 2.5 years. And during that time, I had the opportunity to come to Mongolia a few times and present at LTOM and other teacher training events in Mongolia. I have my master's degree in teaching English to speakers of other languages, and I've spent about 10 years teaching both English as a second language and English as a foreign language. I'm really happy that I can provide this series of workshops for you, and I'm grateful for the great feedback you have been giving me about how much you've been enjoying the workshops. And I hope that you will enjoy today's topic. I wanted to briefly just discuss our objectives for today. Today, my goals are to explain some key ideas about learning and teaching grammar, and then to list some fun ways to teach grammar, to specifically do some activities that you can do in your classroom to help your students enjoy and learn grammar. So let's start with 3 key questions. First, what is grammar? How is grammar learned? And finally, how is grammar taught? So first of all, what is grammar? Well, grammar is the form of a language. It's the way we put words into sentences, the way we change words in order to create meaning. And so it's the form that the language takes. Second of all, grammar is a dynamic system. This means that grammar is changing. It doesn't stay the same. Generally, grammar changes very slowly, but it does change, and that's important to recognize when we're teaching a language. One example of this is the they and their pronoun. This is a plural pronoun. We use it to replace a plural noun. However, in recent years in English, many people have started to use they and their as a gender neutral pronoun. So in a sentence like, each student raised his or her hand, instead of saying his or her, many people in the United States will now use their. Each student raised their hand. Now, technically, this is an error. It's incorrect, but it is becoming more and more used and more accepted in American English. So if you are listening to things from the US, movies, other things, it's something that your students are going to hear, and most Americans don't really consider this an error anymore. Grammar is sequences and patterns. It's the order we put the words in order to have meaning, or it's patterns like 2 words that often come together. And finally, it's meaning and form. So what do I mean by this? This is something that Diane Larson Freeman talks about, that first we have to know the form of the grammar. How is it formed? Second, we have to know the meaning. What does it mean? And third, we have to know the use. When or why is it used? So for example, for past tense, the form is to add a D or an ED to the end of the word. The meaning is that the action occurred in the past And the use, we use this in informal and formal discourse, and we use it with regular verbs. In order to correctly use this grammar, our students need all of this information: the form, the meaning, and the use. Our second key question is, how is grammar learned? Grammar is not learned one construction at a time. We do not completely learn one idea and then completely learn another. Learning is a gradual process that takes place over time, and it overlaps with different concepts as we teach grammar. Because of that, often overgeneralizations will lead to new errors. This means that as we teach students more grammar, they will make errors. For example, when we first introduce present perfect to students, many students will overgeneralize and use this tense when they should be using past simple. Also, language learners rely on the knowledge and experience they already have. Maybe a learner has realized that the past tense of walk is walked and the past tense of, so they have this idea of the regular tense of adding ed. And so then they generalize this to, and we get expressions like teached or goed, which are incorrect, but they're simply overgeneralizing. They're using the knowledge and experience they have with past tense to create this error. And finally, different learning processes apply to different aspects of language learning. For some aspects of language learning, like using regular past tense, using irregular past tense verbs, this relies a lot on drill and memorization. We need to memorize the different irregular verbs. But other learning processes might apply to different aspects, such as having students do fill in the blanks, or having students apply things to a personal context and use it in a personal way. And so we want to be thinking as teachers, how can we help our students experience different aspects of grammar in different ways? The answer is not always to have the students do some kind of memorization or grammar drill. Finally, how is grammar taught? Traditionally, grammar has been taught with the present, practice, produce formula that we've talked a little bit about previously. So first the teacher presents or teaches the grammar topic. The student and teacher work together to do some kind of practice, like a fill in the blank activity or a multiple choice activity. And finally, the students might produce some simple grammar, such as by writing their own sentences. Two other common methods of teaching grammar is a focus on form. This is often used with young children, where grammar is perhaps not formally taught, that we use what are known as enhancing input and input flooding. So input flooding is when teachers simply provide many, many examples of the form they are teaching. For example, if I was teaching past tense, instead of formally teaching it, I would just give my students lots and lots of examples of me using past tense. Finally, we have the concept of grammaring. And in grammaring, the idea is to really focus on the learning challenge. This is an idea presented by Diane Larson Freeman, and she talks about the ideas of form, meaning, and use, and thinking about where will our students encounter a challenge or a difficulty. And this is one of the places where you, as Mongolian English teachers, have a real advantage because you speak Mongolian and you speak English, and you have learned English as a second or third language. You know the challenges. You know which parts of English are particularly difficult for Mongolian speakers. And so you can help your students negotiate those difficult points. And this can be a real benefit and help your students because you can anticipate, oh, this and this are really different between English and Mongolian. So my students are going to struggle. So these are things that I can do as the teacher to help them better understand or to help them not struggle as much. I want to end with this quote that kind of leads us into the activities. It says, grammar is a dynamic system. Students have to experience lessons in which grammar is used in meaningful and authentic ways. Drills have a function, but mechanical drills rob students of the experience of using the system to express what they want to say. I really love the middle part of this quote, that students have to experience lessons in which grammar is used in meaningful and authentic ways. This doesn't mean filling out a worksheet in their workbooks. This means using the language, using the grammar to express themselves, to convey ideas and thoughts and feelings. And we really want to, and that's what I want to focus on today, is using games and activities to pull the grammar out of the textbook and off the worksheets and into meaningful and authentic use. So let's talk about how we can do this and how can we make grammar fun. Today I wanted to talk about 3 specific ways that we can make grammar more fun, more engaging, more authentic, and more meaningful for our students. First, by making it student-centered. Second, by using games. And third, by using music. Before we jump into our activities, I want to briefly discuss the benefits of fun. So fun can be a really powerful tool for teaching because it creates higher interest levels, it increases motivation, and it lowers the affective filter. Lowering the affective filter means the students are more comfortable and relaxed in our classes. And we know this is really important for language learning. When students are very stressed and very anxious, it's much more difficult for them to learn, especially in a language classroom. When students are comfortable and relaxed, it's easier for them to learn and remember the language. So we want to do whatever we can to lower that affective filter, to reduce the anxiety and the stress in our classrooms so our students can be comfortable and relaxed. So first of all, we can make our grammar activities more student-centered. And what do I mean by this? I mean, we can make them more interesting to our students, and we can also involve our students more in these activities. First of all, I've talked several times in the past 2 workshops about the idea of the kinds of examples we use in class. So I wanted to briefly give you an example of this. This is a really simple thing you can do to make your grammar class more student-centered. Instead of using a generic example from the book with a generic name like Mr. Smith, we can make our sentences more personal, either by using the names of celebrities like Taylor Swift, with whom our students are familiar and interested, or we can also use names from the students in our classes or people at our schools to create more interest. And we can also use examples that come from our schools and our communities of events or things that are happening. And this makes the sentences more interesting and encourages students to pay more attention. And that's something really simple that you can do to make grammar more interesting and more fun. The first activity I want to talk about today is called Write, Word, Write. This is a very student-centered activity because all of the content is not coming from me as the teacher. The students are helping me create the content. In fact, we're working together to create that content. So for this activity, everyone will need a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, something to write with. Let's get started. So we start with the teacher giving all the students a word. For today's example, we're going to use irregular past tense verbs, and we're going to be practicing writing sentences in the past tense. But you could do this with many different types of words. Your word for today is write. On your paper, I would like you to write the word write. And now I would like you to write a sentence using this word in the past tense. So on the line below write a sentence using the word in the past tense. For example, someone might write, I wrote a letter to my grandma. Next, the students are going to write a new word, just a word. Because we're working on irregular past tense, they will write an irregular verb. For example, this student wrote eat. Underneath your sentence, write one irregular verb. Now you will pass your paper to the next student and then repeat steps 2 through 4. So the next participant will write a sentence using the word eat. I ate eggs and toast for breakfast. Then that person writes a new verb and passes the paper. And the next student uses the word in a sentence. After the word write, each additional verb will differ because the individual students are writing the words. I'm going to give you a few minutes now to practice this activity. I hope this activity went well. One of the things I like about this is that it's very adaptable. You can use different kinds of verbs or words, and you can use different grammar points. For example, you could give students adjectives and have them write comparative sentences. Or you could use this to practice other tenses, such as future or present perfect or past perfect, or really, there's a lot of different options with this. It integrates grammar, vocabulary, and writing. In fact, you could adapt this and make it more of a vocabulary activity. Once students have learned the procedure, it can be really fast-paced and fun. We do it quickly. There's a fluency aspect to this where we give students 30 seconds to write a word, maybe less time than that, but we get the pace moving so that it's moving very quickly. And finally, we can follow up either by having students check and correct for errors, or they could even use the collection of words to create a story, or even use the different sentences to try to create a story. Take a few minutes now to discuss this activity. Would this work in your classroom? What do you think? Our second activity I want to discuss is using games in the classroom. So with games, first of all, it's important that you model how to play, that you show students an example of how to do what they're doing. You might do this yourself, or you might get a couple of your students to model with you. As we talked about last week with classroom management, you also want to make sure to set expectations. This means clearly explain to the students what you expect them to do. If there are any specific or special expectations or limits that you need to place on an activity. For example, maybe you need to talk to the students about the volume of their voices. Remind students to speak in a quiet voice. Or maybe there are other expectations or limits you need to set on the game to help the students be successful. I encourage you to use small groups of about 4 to 5 people. This encourages maximum participation from each student. If groups get too large, then it can be really difficult for everyone to participate in the game. Students become bored, and when students become bored, that is when we have behavior problems. And finally, as the teacher, you want to make sure that you are monitoring the groups. You are walking around your classroom, paying attention if anyone has any questions or needs help, and also making comments on how students are following the expectations and participating in the game. Today we're going to discuss 2 games. The first game is called Object Find. I use this game primarily to review prepositions of place, but it could be used for other purposes as well, such as practicing questions or practicing other kinds of vocabulary or grammar points. So quickly, here's a list of some of our common prepositions of place. Okay. In this game, we start with an object that we're going to hide. So Alta has an object with her today, and we're going to choose a participant to briefly step out of the room. While he or she is out of the room, another participant will hide this object in the classroom. Then our first participant will come back into the room. The task is for this participant to find the object. He or she will ask yes or no questions with prepositions of place to try to find the object. So I'm going to give you a few minutes now to do this activity with Alta and the participants there. I hope you enjoyed this activity. It's one of my favorites to do with students and provides a real authentic way of practicing these prepositions of place in seeking out and trying to find this object. Our second activity comes from a popular party game that's played in the United States called Never Have I Ever. I've adapted this game to make it a little bit easier, but we'll discuss the more difficult version. A party game is a game that is played many times by teenagers when they get together and have a party or an event. And really, you don't need anything for this activity. I would recommend making sure that students have paper and a pencil so they can write some things down, but really all you need is your hand. So we're going to use this activity to practice perfect tense. So quickly to review, perfect tense is formed with the subject, the verb to have, and the past participle. For example, I have been to Ulaanbaatar. I have eaten horse. I have seen Avengers Endgame. These sentences are all in perfect tense. I start this activity by having students brainstorm a list of things that they have done. And I encourage them to be specific. The more specific for this game, the better. So maybe they have broken a bone, Be specific. I have broken my arm, or I have broken my finger. Maybe they have flown in an airplane, or maybe they have been to a place. Next, once students have their list, I divide students into small groups. Again, usually 4 to 5 students. Each student holds up 5 fingers, and they take turns saying something they have done from their list. For example, I have been to Ulaanbaatar. If another student in the group has also done that thing, he or she must put down 1 finger. And the last person with a finger up is the winner. So for example, if I was playing this game with my friend, and my friend says that she has been to California, I would put my finger down because I have been to California. We match. I would take my turn. Again, if we match, my friend would put a finger down. It's next my friend's turn. She says, I have broken my arm. I have not broken my arm. So my finger stays up. I don't need to put my finger down unless we match. We have both done the same thing, eaten the same thing, been to the same place. The last student with 1 finger up is the winner. Okay, I'm going to give you a few minutes to go ahead and do this activity. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed playing this game. The more difficult version of this game, Never Have I Ever, requires students to brainstorm a list of things they have never done. For example, maybe they have never been in an airplane, or maybe they have never eaten a specific food. Again, students are divided into small groups and each holds up 5 fingers. This time, though, it becomes a little more complicated. Students say something they have never done. For example, I have never broken a bone. And the other members of the group put down a finger if they have done that thing. So if I say, I have never broken a bone, anyone in my group who has broken a bone would put a finger down. If another person in my group said, I have never been to China, I would need to put a finger down because I have been to China. This version is a little bit more complicated, but if you have more advanced students, it can add that more advanced level of both thinking and language skills. Again, take a couple minutes and discuss these activities. How do you think they would work in your classroom? Here's a few resources for games that you can find online. First, the American English website has Activate games, which are great for speaking, but they can also be really great for grammar. And you could even download the template to make your own game. Second, this book, Fun with Grammar, is a free downloadable book online and has many games and activities for helping to practice different grammar principles. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about using music. I have found with my students that music is very powerful. And even though I feel like I am not very musical, I'm not a very good singer, and I don't play any instruments, but my students really connect with music. And so I've learned to use music in my classrooms. With music, you want to make sure that your music is age appropriate, that the lyrics and the song are all good for your level of learners. You want to also find music that teaches something. And I'll mention this more in a minute, but make sure to be careful, especially if you're using modern or popular music, because some music is not grammatically correct. And so if you're using it to teach grammar, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the grammar. Children's songs can be really useful for teaching grammar. And finally, using music has the added benefit of helping with pronunciation. So our next activity is singing a song. So in English, we frequently use the gerund, the ing form of a verb, to be the subject when we're talking about things we like to do. For example, reading is enjoyable. Singing is fun. Playing on my phone is my favorite pastime. So if I wanted to teach this to young children, I might use a song such as this one. This song is very simple, and it uses the gerund form, singing, in part of the song. This is how the song goes. Singing a song is fun to do, fun to do, fun to do. Singing a song is fun to do, to do, to do, to do. Now, we would sing this once or twice so the students could get the tune. And then we can change the words so they can add in the things that they like to do. For example, we could use reading a book. Reading a book is fun to do, fun to do, fun to do. Reading a book is fun to do, to do, to do, to do. Or riding a bike. Riding a bike is fun to do, fun to do, fun to do. Riding a bike is fun to do, to do, to do, to do. I could call on different students to give me activities that they enjoy doing to put into the song. I can also use modern songs or popular songs. I often use these with my older learners, teenagers or young adults, to teach them grammar. And I generally do a fill in the blank exercise. Two of my favorites for this are the song If I Had $1 Million by Bare Naked Ladies to teach the unreal conditional, and I still haven't found what I'm looking for by U2 to teach the present perfect. There are many other examples of good songs that can be used for helping students to learn these grammar principles. Finally, I wanted to briefly mention jazz chants. Jazz chants are snappy, upbeat chants created by a woman named Carolyn Graham. They use jazz rhythms in order to help emphasize the natural stress and intonation patterns of conversational English. They're frequently used to help with American English pronunciation. However, they can also be good for teaching grammar. Instead of doing routine drills, I might teach my students a jazz chant. For example, if we were working on irregular past tense, I might use this jazz chant. With a jazz chant, you always want to start with a beat. Say, said, stop on red, eat, ate, don't be late, break, broke, have a Coke, take, took, learn to cook, speak, spoke, tell a joke, write, wrote, get off the boat. Now, in this jazz chant, I've got a couple of things going on. One, I'm learning the irregular past tense of many frequent verbs. Excuse me. Two, I'm also helping students learn the intonation patterns of English, that we stress our main words and reduce our function words. I can have students repeat this several times. We can go slow, we can go fast, And once students learn the pattern, I can help them to go really fast when they say it. This creates fun and excitement in the classroom. For example, say, said, stop on red, eat, ate, don't be late, break, broke, have a Coke, take, took, learn to cook, speak, spoke, tell a joke, write, wrote, get off the boat. Now, that was super fast. But we can work with students to go slow or go fast, and this can be another way of reviewing these irregular past tense verbs. There are other jazz chants that you can find online. Here's a few resources for you. You have American English, Sing Out Loud, and American Rhythms. These are books and materials that are available for free on the American English website. I've also listed a few other websites where you can find lists of songs for teaching grammar. And here's a few resources on jazz chants, some different files with information about using these in your classroom. Finally, a few more resources. I've already mentioned the American English website that has the English Teaching Forum that has many good ideas, as well as Activate Games. Another book you can download for free from the internet is Grammar Practice Activities by Penny Ure. This has many different grammar games and activities. And another website that has lots of good grammar practice activities is Dave's ESL Cafe at eslcafe.com. Finally, use your own experience as a teacher to develop and adapt these ideas. Many of the ideas I've shared with you today, like the singing a song, or the never have I ever, are games and activities that I did as a child or a teenager, just as part of my everyday life, and I've taken them and adapted them for learning English. So be creative, use things that your students already know and are familiar with, and help them to use those things to learn English. So, what did you add to your toolbox today? What's a new activity that you participated in that you want to try? Take a few minutes and discuss with a couple people sitting next to you. Finally, a quick reminder about our Facebook page and group for the AC Methodology Workshop Series. I've loved the comments and the things that people have been posting, so please continue to post. Ask questions, share examples, and share resources with one another. I would encourage you later tonight or tomorrow to post on the Facebook page a grammar activity that you do in your class. What's a game or an activity or something fun you do to help your students learn grammar? And again, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you coming and participating, and I hope that you are leaving with more good ideas for teaching grammar in your classroom and making it meaningful and authentic.